Anthropic just launched something that will help you with your usage limits and potentially model degradation. It's session management and 1 million context. Look, today we're rolling out a new update to usage to help you understand your usage with Claude Code. This was informed by a number of conversations with customers. What came up again and again in these calls is that there is a lot of variance in how you might manage your sessions, especially with our new update to 1 million context in Claude Code. Some of the questions were, do you only use one session or two sessions that you keep open in a terminal? Do you start a new session with every prompt? When do you use compact, rewind, or subagents? What causes a bad compact? There's a surprising amount of detail here that can really shape your experience with Claude Code, and almost all of it comes from managing your context window. So if you use Claude Code, if you're thinking about using Claude Code, if you're just learning about AI, you're going to want to watch this, okay? So look, a quick primer on context, compaction, and context rot. So these things are very important. Look at this image here. It's the context window. Everything the model can see when it generates the next response. It can see system prompt, Claude MD, the MD file, conversation so far, tool calls and their outputs, files read, and free space. And then this is all within the 1 million token context window. And after 1 million, it's a hard cutoff. So the context window is everything the model can see at once when generating its responses. It includes everything that I basically just said. Claude Code has a context window of 1 million tokens. You need to know that. And the whole gist of everything here is you're going to want to not let the context window fill up. So look, unfortunately, using context has a slight cost, which is often called context rot. So that is a phrase you're going to want to pay attention to and learn about. Context rot is the observation that model performance, ding, 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 this is key right here, degrades as context grows because attention gets spread across more tokens and older irrelevant content start to distract from the current task. So even if you're using a chat like the chat, Claude chat, or even some other AI chat, it just makes sense to compact, which you can't do really in chat, or start a new session. So look at this. Context windows are a hard cutoff. So when you're nearing the end of the context window, you'll need to summarize the task you've been working on into a smaller description and continue the work in a new context window. We call this compaction. Many of you should be already familiar with compaction. You can also trigger compaction yourself, and you're going to want to. For this reason right here, this is the context window, right? The model is at its sharpest point when the context window is at its lowest or earliest. And context rot or rotting starts to take place when it gets closer to that 1 million hard cutoff token context window. So once you compact, a summary takes place, and then you continue, right? Right here, you see the summary, and then you have whatever else coming next. The window is finite when it fills compact into a summary and keep working so you can carry over. So look, every turn is a branching point. Say you just ask Claude to do something and it's finished. You've now got some information in your context. You got tool calls, tool outputs, your instructions, etc. And you have a surprising number of options for what to do next. You can continue, right? Send another message in the same session, which pretty much everybody does. You can rewind by pressing escape twice. You can jump back to a previous message and try again from there, which is going to be very important. We'll get into that. You can clear it. You can start fresh, which you most likely should do when you're ready to. Usually with a brief you've distilled from what you just learned, and we'll talk about how you can get Claude to write that for you as well. You can compact, which majority of people should be doing before it gets to that context window. Summarize the session so far and keep going on top of the summary. And then you got subagents, where you can delegate the next chunk of work to an agent with its own clean context and only pull its result back in so you don't have all of this bloat. So while the most natural is to just continue, which a lot of people do, and then they run into high usage limits and model degradation, The other 4 options exist to help manage your context and help manage your usage limits and help manage model degradation. So like we said, fresh session, that's clear. You got compact, you got subagent, you got rewind, and the basic one that everybody does is just continue and let the context window hit at the 1 million. So when to start a new session? When do you keep a long running session versus starting a new one? Our general rule of thumb is when you start a new task, you should also start a new session. 1 million context windows do mean that you can now do longer tasks more reliably. For example, to have it build a full stack app from scratch. Sometimes you may do related tasks where some of the context is still necessary, but not all of it. So that's why you don't want it to fill up. So they give an example here. For example, writing the documentation for a feature you just implemented. While you could start a new session, Claude would have to reread the files that you just implemented, which could be slower or would be slower and more expensive. So let's look at rewinding instead of correcting. If you had to pick one habit that signals good context management is rewind. In Claude Code, double tapping escape or running the rewind lets you jump back to any previous message and reprompt from there. The messages after that point are dropped from the context, freeing up the context window, helping with usage limits, and therefore helping with model degradation. Rewind is often the better approach to correction. For example, Claude reads 5 files, then tries an approach, and it doesn't work. Your instinct may be the type that didn't work, try this instead. But the better move is to rewind to just after the file reads and reprompt with what you learned. Don't use approach A. The foo model doesn't expose that. Go straight to B. So what this essentially does is instead of you having Claude read the files, attempt this, then you say no, try B, it attempts B, then you say no, try C, and attempt C. You have all this bloat in the window. You can literally have it read the files, right? It already attempted A, so instead of having the A attempt in the context window, right, it already tried B. Instead of having it in the window, each time it attempts, okay, it attempt A, rewind back to file reads. Now attempt B, it attempts B, rewind back to the file reads and say, use C, not A or B. Boom. Okay, C works, we're good. If C didn't work, you could just rewind back and then say, none of these worked, try something else. That way you're clearing up the context window, helping your usage limits stay low, right? And at the same time, removing model degradation. And we're going to talk about that. So rewind is the better approach all in all. You can also use summarize from here to have Claude summarize its learnings and create a handoff message, kind of like a message to the previous iteration of Claude from its future self that tried something and it didn't work. So you can still rewind with the summary. All of that helps clear up the context window. That's the key part that you have to understand here. So compacting versus fresh sessions. This is literally gold, all of this information here for anyone that's trying to build with Claude Code. Once a session gets long, you have 2 ways to shed weight, right? You can compact or you can clear, which means to start fresh. They feel similar but behave very differently. Compact asks the model to summarize the conversation so far, then replaces the history with that summary. It's lossy. You're trusting Claude to decide what mattered, but you didn't have to write anything yourself, and Claude might be more thorough in including important learnings or files. You can also steer by passing instructions, running compact, and then saying like focus on the auth refactor, drop the test debugging, whatever. So I'm going to tell you a way that you can literally keep compact but start fresh and have Claude write it for you, and then you can make some changes from there. So look at this image. You have a long session. You got 2 options. You can compact or you can clear. If you really don't care and you just really want Claude to compact it for you and you're not really worried about the compaction and what it's summarizing, you can just have Claude do it for you. It'll do a good job. And unless there's something really important that you want to go over to the new session, I would just do the compacting. That's just my suggestion. So let the model decide what mattered out of that whole interaction, and then you just keep going from that summary. Don't let it get to the 1 million context window. Start fresh with a compaction, which is a summary of what you guys talked about, what was worked on, what was done, and then start from there, keeping the context window very, very open, and therefore having the model be fresh. That way it doesn't lead to model degradation. But for the fresh with the brief, it says your handwritten brief. Instead, you could write it yourself, but instead of writing it yourself, you can say, Claude, give me a compaction, or give me a chat port that I could port over to a new session, right? You can say, port this chat or port this interaction into something that I can carry over into the new session, right? So that way you have Claude writing your brief for you, and then you can read before you start fresh, you can read the actual LLM written summary, the LLM written compaction, and then you can make changes from there. So if Claude is missing something, or if you want to add something, or if you want to change something, that's how you can do it right there. And then you can just tell it, add this, remove that, change this. Then you have an LLM written summary that you didn't have to write, but you could have read it and audited the summary, and now you're carrying it over into the new session with everything that you really want. So it'll be precise. You won't have to write it, and you can decide what mattered, as opposed to just letting the LLM decide what matters. So it's more work, yes. If you do it the way that I'm suggesting, you don't have to write it yourself. So it's kind of less work, and it's more exact. And I would suggest that if you're really particular on what needs to be done. If you're just having Claude do basic stuff and you don't care about what it remembers and it's doing a good job already and it hasn't made any mistakes, compaction is good enough. So with clear, you basically write down what matters and it starts clean. It's more work, but the resulting context is what you decided was relevant, and it's more precise. So what causes a bad compact? Basically letting the context window fill up. So if you run a lot of long running sessions, you might have noticed times in which compacting might be particularly bad. In this case, the article says, we've often found that bad compacts can happen when the model can't predict the direction your work is going. For example, auto compact fires after a long debugging session and summarizes the investigation, and your next message is, now fix that other warning we saw in bar TS, right? But because the session was focused on debugging, the other warning might have been dropped from the summary just because the context window was so long. This is particularly difficult because due to context rot, which is a very important phrase, the model is at its least intelligent point when compacting. So we're getting huge knowledge here. And it says with 1 million context, you have more time to compact proactively with a description of what you want to do. So the model is not acting dumb and you're not using so much usage limits with the context window filling up, but with you also having to go back and reiterate what the model should be doing. They literally told us right here, if you want to save usage limits and if you want to save model degradation, the context window has to be low, right? Has to not fill up. That's when the model is at its sharpest, as you can see by this image here. And it starts rotting once it gets closer to that 1 million context window. So when you really think about things, it's going to be important for you to focus on basically not letting that context window fill up, because if you do, then it's going to get to that point where you have high usage limits and high compaction. So lastly, we'll talk about subagents and fresh context windows. So subagents are a form of context management useful for when you know in advance that a chunk of work will produce a lot of intermediate output you won't need again. So when Claude spawns a subagent via the agent tool, that subagent gets its own fresh context window. it can do as much work as it needs to and then synthesize its results so only the final report comes back to the parent, saving more context window. The mental test we use, they state, will I need this tool output again or just a conclusion? While Claude Code will automatically call subagents, you may want to tell it to explicitly do this. For example, you may want to tell it to spin up a subagent to verify the result of work, spin up a subagent to read through this other code base and summarize what was implemented, spin off a subagent to write the docs on this feature based on the Git changes. So in summary, when Claude has ended a turn and you're about to send a new message, you have a decision point and you should make a decision. Over time, they expect that Claude will help you handle this itself. But for now, this is one of the ways you can guide Claude's output and basically save on two things: usage limits and model degradation with these 5 things. Continue like you've been doing and hit the limit. That's bad. Rewind, pretty powerful. Compact, of course, that's the summary. Clear, start fresh. But if you use my suggestion to have Claude show you the compaction, show you the summary first, or give you the summary first, you copy that and then you hit clear, you have a more concise and more directed compact without just letting the LLM do it for you. And then you have subagents to spin off if you want them to do other things that don't bloat the current parent context window. So a lot of free game here, a lot of powerful information that Anthropic just dropped to help users leverage Claude Code in a way that most people are not doing. And I love that. So lastly, I want to talk about this. Research preview, you have routines in Claude Code, which allow you to configure a routine once, which is a prompt, a repo, and your connectors, and it can run on a schedule from an API call or in response to an event. So they state routines run on our web infrastructure, so you don't have to keep your laptop open. This is huge. This is all coming because of the response of agents. And we're seeing this agentic workflow start to really ramp up now. Claude is having a lot of answers for these agents and these agent harnesses. And this is yet again another one of them. And we're going to see automation, agent automation workflows really start to ramp up in the future. You can even see Claude with the Z's right here because it's like, okay, give me some work to do. But this is going to be huge. So routines each come with their own API endpoints, so you can point your alerts, deploy hooks, or internal tools at Claude directly. Try sending Claude an alert payload and asking it to find the owning service and post a triage summary to on call. You can post a message and get back a session URL. They say webhook routines subscribe to GitHub events and let Claude respond as they come in. And schedule routines let you give Claude a cadence and walk away. You basically just tell it, hey, Claude, go pull the top bug from Linear every night at 2 a.m. Attempt to fix and open a draft pull request. So look at this. If you've been using schedule in the CLI, those are routines now. And there's nothing to migrate. It's basically saving you so much time, and it's already available today across all paid plans with Claude Code on the web enabled. So Anthropic shipping, we're seeing a lot of this take place. Funnily enough, as we're talking about usage limits and compaction, right? I saw today that OpenAI is going to be launching manual compaction for Codex, which is really good if you guys use Codex as well as Claude Code, or if you're just a Codex only type of person. They're going to have that coming soon. I don't know when. We'll check on that and possibly keep you updated. But yeah, that was the video. Pretty much a longer video today, but this was pretty much free game. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, you know what to do. Subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for content you want to see in the future, let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.